I have spoken about the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism before and emphasised its importance to the conversations of the day by virtue of its linkage of unfair criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. So, to give credit where credit is due, it was pleasing to see how Labor led the way in this country by stating that if elected, it will adopt this definition as government policy. Prime Minister Scott Morrison subsequently made the same move, although it is hard not to imagine that it was triggered by Labor getting in first. In fact, when the AJA was in Canberra earlier this year, a senior staffer to the Minister of Foreign Affairs told us that the IHRA definition was not on their radar, and anyway, it was unnecessary as Australia had other laws that cover the same areas of Jew hatred. But I have to say that whilst what Labor did was very welcome, I think that they have painted themselves into a corner because of their prior commitment to recognise a state of Palestine if they get elected. The Palestinian Authority on Israel's doorstep is an anti-Semitic and anti-Zionistic pseudo-government that wants to replace Israel with some sort of Arab majority state. It's what they imply very clearly, if not directly saying so. The language the Palestinian government in waiting uses flagrantly violates the very essence of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. So how does Labor reconcile these two conflicting positions? I can't see how they can support terrorist-in-chief and Holocaust denier Mahmoud Abbas and the IHRA statement at the same time. Thanks to Palestinian Media Watch, we have a litany of anti-Semitic and anti-Israel statements attributed directly to Mahmoud Abbas, such as Jews defile and desecrate the Al-Aqsa Mosque by visiting the Temple Mount. Abbas has also said that the Jews' social role and usury caused the Holocaust, and Jews were hated, he said, because of their own behaviour. And then there are maps and cartoons from the Palestinian Authority that regularly erase the entire state of Israel, saying there is no Israel in any borders, only Palestine. So tell me, how is Labor going to deal with these very obvious violations of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and embrace Abbas as leader of some mythical state of Palestine all at the same time? But once the definition is formally adopted, there are other ramifications that will need to be addressed. Presumably, these will be easier for our current coalition than for Labor, but either way, they will need to be dealt with. Al-Jazeera published an opinion piece recently on their website titled "Why It Is Crucial to Keep a Spotlight on Israel's Apartheid," another flagrant breach of the definition. So will the current government, or a Labor one, do something about Al Jazeera material being frequently used on the ABC? And then there's the Greens, whose Senator Janet Rice made a statement to Parliament in May this year expressing the Australian Greens' solidarity with Palestinian people and condemning both Israel's actions and Australia's silence against, quote, Israeli apartheid. And of course, not so long ago, we had the issue of Barrister Julian Burnside likening Israelis to Nazis. All of these examples would qualify as anti-Semitic under the IHRA definition, so it is not hard to see why the left are so upset about it. But to cap it off, you need look no further than the good old Australian Jewish Democratic Society and the New Israel Fund. Even with both Liberals and Labor accepting the IHRA definition, these two hard-left organisations still had issues to complain about. They are so hostile to the notion of a Jewish Israel that they will side with Israel's enemies every time. So what's the upshot? The IHRA definition of anti-Semitism has been adopted, and that's a good move. It's something the AJA has advocated vigorously for since 2019. Now we need to ensure that it gets used properly, starting with its application to educational institutions and the media. Otherwise, it remains just a token act of support for Jewish Australians. This is Alan Freedman for the Australian Jewish Association.